My name is Judy Kretsch. I was born and raised here in Kitchener-Waterloo. I have been married for 51 years to the same man, no less. And we have 2 grown children and 5 grandchildren. We live outside of St. Clements, so I'm kind of out in the country and not in town. I've been practicing Tai Chi for over 30 years, and I've been leading classes for over 20. As far as the program itself goes, Tai Chi is a series of slow, gentle movements that flow from one to the next. Sometimes, and actually most often, it is taught from the perspective of a perfect form. So aligning your neck and your shoulder and your knee and your hip to allow for a flow in the body. Fortunately, my teacher taught it from the perspective of the breath. So first we breathe, then we connect to our breathing. It's an internal kind of thing. Then we connect moving to breathing, and we let the form emerge. So there's much less work involved. You allow yourself to learn rather than trying to learn. And from this perspective, even if someone isn't well, they're fatigued because of surgery, they're fatigued because they're in treatment, it's a beautiful, gentle way to begin moving again. You can do it sitting down. I've even had people, you can lay down. You know, especially in Zoom, nobody sees what you're doing, but you begin by breathing with them. Through the breathing and the slow, gentle movement, the participants learn to relax, to center, to stay in the moment, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And, you know, it's often called moving meditation. And it's much easier for many people, especially if you have pain, to move slowly and gently than to sit still and empty your mind. That can be very difficult for someone who's beginning, someone who's in pain. Well, my program runs through HopeSpring every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. People can phone HopeSpring and sign up, or I believe they can sign up right from the HopeSpring website. I feel like I have too much connection with cancer, along with maybe many, many other people. My mom died of breast cancer. Her sister died of breast cancer. My older sister died of breast cancer. My brother died of stomach cancer. And my younger sister just this past summer had a mastectomy as a prevention. And when they did the biopsy after the surgery, they found a spot of cancer that had begun. So despite, and friends and other people in my classes, but these ones I've mentioned are very close to home. I learned about HopeSpring from my Tai Chi teacher. He originally taught the classes at HopeSpring. And he approached me one day and asked me if there was any chance that I would be willing to take over the classes from him. And so I agreed, and that's how I learned about HopeSpring, was by joining. And then seeing for myself the wonderful work that was being done by so many volunteers. And actually, at the point that I joined HopeSpring, my sister was ill, and I introduced her to HopeSpring and its services. Well, what I would add to that is actually why I was in Tai Chi in the first place. So that is what prompted me to want to teach. I haven't experienced cancer personally, but I have experienced a great deal of pain. I was in, I think, 5 car accidents, never driving, so I'm not a bad driver. I was hurt, obviously more than once, a series of whiplash injuries. I was at the point where I was in pain from head to toe all the time. And I started my first accident, I was still in high school. I monitored the last part of grade 13 because my joints stiffened up. I couldn't write. Enough about that part of the journey. The point is, I had a lot of pain. And so the doctors really had no answers for me, had no help for me. And finally, that doesn't make sense to me, go home and cope. And so in my searching, I found Tai Chi. And I was talking to a girl and said, do you think I could do it? She said, come meet my teacher. So I went, I started doing classes. The first thing I experienced was that first of all, I could do classes. I hadn't been able to do much of anything. And it took me about maybe like at the end of each class, I'd feel more relaxed than when I came in. So I thought, well, I'll keep doing it. After about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I went to my teacher and I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay and breathe to the worst spot until it's not the worst spot. And so I just from there went forward. After it took me at least 2 years. And then my husband noticed that I was getting better. He said, you're not going up the stairs on your hands and your knees anymore because you're so exhausted. You don't lie in bed in pain from head to toe all the time. And your headaches. I said, well, I still get headaches. I said, wait a minute. There's bigger spaces between my headaches, aren't there? I said, I'm actually getting better. Like when people have pain, they don't notice if they have a little less. They notice if they have a little more. And I was having a little less and a little less, but not that I noticed. And I got so excited by actually realizing that I was improving that I went and did more. And as I did more, my health is restored. At over 70 years of age, I feel much younger and more flexible than I did at 40 years of age. And this is why I want to share with all these people who are suffering the priceless gift that I found in Tai Chi. So you're sitting in your chair, your feet are flat on the floor. I often recommend a card table chair as well because there's no restrictions to it. You put one foot forward. You breathe in. You go to the bottom of the sea. So I'm just going down toward my foot. If you can't go that far, it's fine. As you breathe in, you lift the water into the sky. And then breathing out, you shower yourself with the water. And you feel how wonderful it feels. It's exactly the temperature that you like. And then you continue breathing out back to the sea, scooping up the water. I talk usually in pictures so that people can allow their bodies to respond in the way that works for them. So then we would change feet and go to the other side. So now I'll put my chair back, at least out of the way, and say if people were standing. Now I'm going to say at the end of that breath, switch to the other foot. So now I'm going to put the other foot out. And I would breathe out. And if I can just go here, that's fine. Scoop up some water. The sea's as deep as you need it to be. And you let the water cascade over your head, your back, your legs, your arms. And then you release your body again to the sea. And I say release. I don't say stretch. I don't want anybody to stretch. If you stretch an elastic, it snaps back. We're just letting go. And so you let go as far as your body will let go. You let your head dangle, your shoulders dangle. You scoop up the water and you do it once again. The first class is the hardest class because you're trying to see what I'm doing. You're trying to follow me. And I always say that to new people that you're probably the only one listening. At least I hope so. If they start thinking, then they'll hear my voice and it'll take them back to the move, to inside, to the breath, whatever I'm saying at the moment. What the participants have experienced through coming to class actually motivates me to do more. My students motivate me, inspire me to just keep going. I'm doing the same thing all the time for over 30 years. And I'm seeing the results in them. Like I had one woman who I always ask, anybody have anything they want to share? This was when we were doing in-person classes. And one woman said to me, I do. I said, wonderful, what? She said, well, I didn't notice something. My husband did. Oh, I said, I like it already. I said, what did he notice? Well, he said the other day at breakfast, Diane, look at your hands. She says, what about my hands? She said, they're really hurting. He said, Diane, look at your hands. So she held up her hand. So the rest of the class was looking at her. They look like hands. And we said, so? She said, well, my thumbs were like this before. She said, because of an injury and surgery stuff, she said, my thumbs were like that. And I just tried everything, physio, and they stayed that way. And she said, here they are, they're out. And I said, well, how long were they like this? Oh, she said, over 30 years. Well, I said, well, no wonder they hurt. If your thumbs were like this for 30 years and they're starting to move, all I have to do is try to carry a grocery bag for 10 minutes on my bent arm. I can't straighten it out, right? So that was amazing. I had an older woman in one of the seniors' homes I used to teach at. She'd been on oxygen for 17 years. And one day at class, I asked my same question, what did you notice? She said, well, I noticed something, Judy. I said, what did you notice? She said, well, and she held up her hand. She said, I do the newsletter for the seniors here. And she said, I have arthritis. But she said, I feel like I'm typing more easily. And I said, that's super. I said, did you notice anything else? She said, no. I said, I noticed something. May I tell you? She said, okay. And I said, honestly, I don't usually pay enough attention to people to notice what you're doing. But because you're on oxygen and she wore the tube in her nose and she had the canister with her, so she was still doing Tai Chi. She would take it out while we would do the sitting parts, and she would put it in front of her. And then she hated it, she said. She'd hated it for 17 years. But then when we get up and start moving arms and stuff, she'd require more oxygen and put it back on. I said, well, Burl, I said, you did your whole soft exercises today without oxygen. She said, what? No. Oh, because it was still sitting there. And she said, wow. And she put her oxygen on right away. So it was, again, a number of months later, I think. She said, Judy, I have something to share. I said, okay, what? She said, I went to the doctor this week and he's turning down my oxygen because I'm getting too much. After 17 years. And an even more moving story for me was a woman in the class she'd been there and told me that she had finally, I guess her diagnosis for her cancer was that she had a cancer spitting tumor. And that meant that her tumor was spitting out mucus filled with cancer cells. And it had filled her abdomen. And they told her 10 years sooner they wouldn't do anything for her. And they said, all what we can do now is we would do surgery and we would remove as many organs as we can, as much of everything as we can that's been affected by the cancer. And then they would treat it with a kind of heat chemo or something while she was open. They couldn't do it otherwise. And she said, well, oh my goodness, right? She said, well, what if I don't want the surgery? He said, check into hospice. Like, there's no other option. So I said to her, I said, what are you going to do? Well, she said, I'm going to try. I said, good for you. And so she went away, had her surgery. It couldn't have been more than a month after her surgery. I saw her walking in over at the inn at Waterloo. She was using a walker. She would take 2 steps and stop and breathe. Take 2 steps and stop and breathe. And I went over and I spoke with her and we got on the elevator together. And I learned that they did this surgery one of her problems breathing was that they'd taken out part of her diaphragm, part of her stomach, as I say, everything they could. And she said, I wanted to come back to class. She said, it did so much for me before. I thought I could do it. I said, well, for sure. And we found a nice comfy armchair for her. I sat her in it. And I said, now just breathe with us. Don't worry about doing anything today. And as we do things, imagine that you are doing them. So imagine going to the bottom of the sea and breathe with us. Follow your own breath, not mine, and carry on. So anyway, this went on for a number of weeks. She kept coming back. And I said to her, I said, like, Sandra, are you sure you're okay to come back? She said, Judy, when I sit in the chair and I start to breathe with you, I imagine the movements. She said, before the class is over, I am breathing normally. And she said, it feels so good to breathe normally. I come back every week. She's now back at work. That I hope I see some more people sign up for class to come and experience for themselves. Don't think you have to learn it. You're going to let your body learn it. It doesn't matter if you have a bad memory. Just come. I'll talk through the whole thing. If you need to hear me, you will. If you don't need to hear me, you won't. And I just love to see more people benefit